Greetings. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Jammin Dude's Neighborhood. I am Jammin Straley, your host. My co-host is off camera. And it's not the Black Russian this time because it's cold outside, so it is Emeril Lagasse's recipe for hot buttered rum. Cheers. And I've got cats. How's it going? I've had an interesting couple of weeks. Yes, that's Gertie over there. That's who you see in the intro video. Out of myself. This is the first in a series of album reviews that I've decided to do on Riverside's catalog, starting with the first album, Out of Myself. You know, this album just hit me really hard because even though I've been listening to it for the last couple of weeks, as a final run through before I filmed this, I sat down here in my man cave where all the magic happens, and I did that old-fashioned thing that I don't get a chance to do too often anymore. I love the experience of just sitting in a room with nothing else going on but the album. And you just sit there with the album in your hands and without all the outside noise, you just start poring over the lyrics. Anybody remember doing that? It was so much fun. It almost brought back memories to me of like when I joined the Columbia House Record Club and I got my first 12 album package for a penny. And I would just sit there with each and every album, and I would sit in my room with my headphones on, and I would just read the lyrics and stare at the artwork. And hours, 6 hours a day probably, I spent in my room every day just listening to music with my headphones on and poring over the lyrics and reading every single word of the thank you notes. And so tonight, I did that run through of Out of Myself, and it took me to a whole different level on this album, because one of the things that leaped out at me right away was Marius's, and forgive me for butchering that name, I'm so sorry, I get so self-conscious. His lyrics, I never realized on the first few run-throughs of the album how minimalist the lyrics are. He doesn't use a lot of words. There's just a lot of very powerful repeated phrases. They're not even... I'm having trouble really putting my finger on it, but as somebody who is... I live with someone who is bipolar, and I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, and my sincere apologies to Marius if this is not true, but I believe he's gone on record as suffering from bipolar disorder. But regardless, let's say he isn't, but he certainly captures that mood regardless on these Reality Dream albums of someone who is searching for themselves, someone who knows that something is wrong, something they know that they are struggling with personal relationships, and they are trying to find out what is going on, whether it's them, whether it's other people. They're trying to be introspective and find out what that issue is, and in just small phrases he manages to capture the mood of exactly what is going on with this self-search inside of a person, and the trouble in trying to relate those ideas to other people. As a matter of fact, that may be the perfect way to put it, is that when you don't know how to put it, you take the only thing that you know how to say, and you end up kind of repeating the simple phrases, and the whole thing, because he does it that way, captures this perfect atmosphere. Right out of the gate with The Same River, for everything that's said, it's really only a few phrases, but it never feels old at all. It never feels like a pop song that just repeats the phrases, because he's changing things up and he's creating an atmosphere. And in fact, for a 12-minute song, he doesn't even begin the lyrics until the 7-minute mark. I can't think of another song that actually does that. Any other song that I can think of where the words don't start until 7 minutes into the song is a much longer piece of music. Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the first half from Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here might be the exception, but most other songs, if they don't start the words until 6 and 7 minutes in, they're usually looking at a 20-minute plus song. So right out of the gate, they're capturing this Pink Floyd mellow, atmospheric kind of mood to what they're creating. And then we go directly into Out of Myself, the title track, which is much more concise and to the point, and does manage to capture the more frantic idea of what's going on in his head. But then they take it right back down again with the ballad of I Believe. And that's one of the things that I love about Riverside, is being able to create this balance. And I never realized, because one of my first exposures was the later album ADHD, which we will get to later, is just how much the mellow side of this band really brings out everything that they're about. And I have a feeling that it's going to increase my appreciation for some of the later mellow albums, and possibly even Shrine of Degeneration Slaves, but we will get around to that. The two Reality Dream instrumentals are amazing in and of themselves, but the one that I wanted to focus on was Loose Heart. Loose Heart is probably, in my opinion, the crown jewel of the album, because of the way that it captures everything that Riverside is about all in one song. You begin with this mellow piece, and it becomes, by the crescendo of the song, you've really reached this moment of complete frustration where you don't know if this person's going to save you or if you're going to be able to save yourself. So I love the way that that mood is captured. We then go into Reality Dream 2, and then back into Minds, which I'm trying to learn how to play, actually. There's some simple chords in there, and it just brings it back down to this idea of hope. Because for all the brokenness is what I'm reading into it anyway, and everybody's has their own interpretation. For all the brokenness, you still end up with this feeling of, but if you lose your faith, I'm still your friend. And if the sky falls down, I will still support you. So you get this positive message through all of this. And then back down to The Curtain Falls, where the person goes back to feeling like it's over. The Curtain Falls, in my opinion, almost ends the story of the album. And then you get to Okay, which almost ends up more like a postlude or a coda to The Curtain Falls. The Curtain Falls ends up being the end of the album proper, and then you get to Okay, which is like, oh, and also. So this is such a strong album and really helped me to appreciate. I can see now why so many Riverside fans that I've read about in the past, they are often talking about how they wish Riverside would have stuck, because they did get through a heavier time. They went through a time where they were being a little bit concentrating more on the heavier side of things. This album opens their career striking a perfect balance of the mellow, atmospheric, moody, dark, and mixing it with small moments of being heavy, and reaching crescendos of frustration only to drop you back down. And so I think that this album is, so many people thought that this was the album of the year when one of the best debuts in progressive rock, is what I have read on the internet, and it's hard to deny. If you haven't checked out Riverside Out of Myself, it is one of the best debut progressive rock albums I've ever heard, and I highly recommend it. So thank you to all the members of Riverside, and we will be covering more of Riverside in the coming weeks. Till then, thank you for joining me on Jammin' Dude's Neighborhood. Have a great weekend, and post your thoughts about Riverside and the year in progressive rock, and we'll see you soon.